All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another discussion of the Amazon adaptation of Wheel of Time, Season 2, Episode 7, which is called, and I may not say this exactly correctly, but Daes Dae'mar or something like that, which means the great game in the Wheel of Time world. So that is kind of a cool allusion to the politicking and the plots within plots that can go on in this world. Several applications to what happens in this episode. I thought it was really cool how I didn't know who to root for in certain moments. Overall, I think this might even be the episode that I enjoyed the most from the season. But AP, what are your? I haven't even introduced you yet. My goodness. I assume everybody knows you by now, but if in case somebody's new to our discussions, this fellow over here that I'm talking to is AP Canavan, a.k.a. a Critical Dragon. That is the name of his channel, and the even-numbered episodes we are discussing on his channel. There will, of course, be a link in the description. But yeah, and we also covered season 1 if anyone's curious and wants to go back and watch those. But yeah, we are having a pretty good time talking about the season. So AP, your thoughts, general thoughts on this episode, number 7, The Great Game.
I really enjoyed this episode, and I enjoyed it for a number of different reasons. Last week's episode was an emotional gut punch, and the core and theme of that was Egwene's story. This week, obviously, that still gets touched on. It's still being developed, but this was a focus a lot more on Rand, on a lot of the plot pieces moving towards a climax. And because of the the name of the episode, which Daes Dae'mar, or people complain about my pronunciation, so they go, "Hey, have you seen any of my videos? I'm terrible at it." But the Great Game, which obviously George R. R. Martin borrowed for Game of Thrones,
Mm.
um, this this was all about betrayals, unlikely alliances, shifting alliances, strange bedfellows, all of those sorts of different aspects. It so much of it was thematically tied to what was going on, and so we had a lot of forward progression in terms of the plot and building towards this big climax at Falme. We had revelations and things being sorted out that had been building during the season, and this was the first episode where I specifically started noticing how good a lot of the scene transitions were,
Mm.
where something was being discussed in one scene, and then the very next scene picked up on that and developed it. And then it carried on and on and on in a chain. And so many of those scene transitions were actually really good. And I was impressed with it. I genuinely enjoyed watching it. I have a couple of quibbles with the episode, but like, when do I not have quibbles?
Never. So, but the transitions I actually noticed, and as I was watching the show, I thought, oh, AP is gonna like that, and because they're thematically linked, these scenes, and I thought it was brilliant. You have remarked several times about this. One of the controlling themes of the season and of the show, and also it's in the books. The idea of control, the idea of one person controlling another, and you see these great transitions where, for example, we'll talk about these threads individually in a moment, but where Swan is controlling Rand, and then that transitions to Egwene being controlled by her Damane. No, she's the Damane. Her the other thing.
Rena.
Yeah, that one. So I thought that those. I also noticed those. I've been hanging around with you for a while, I guess. So it rubs off. But I thought it
Well,
was really cool. Yeah,
even if we think of the opening, because the just
the prologue.
because
Yeah,
the prologue opened with Moraine and Swan talking about going to Kyrene.
yeah,
That
yeah.
was, that was the plan. Then we had Jatara's prophecy. Then it transitions to Swan and Moraine meeting up in Kyrene in the modern day.
Yeah.
Um, And as they're talking about Rand, and it then transitions to Rand outside talking to Lan.
Mm,
And it was just so neatly how they did that, and how the episode began with Moraine and Swan planning to go to Kyrene, and
mm.
the episode ended with Moraine and Swan basically messy divorce. Um,
Yeah.
one leaves,
They're
everything's going
they're
a bit
fighting
wrong.
over the kids even. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, no, it was really I think a very uh, thoughtfully put together show. And I enjoyed that aspect of it. But shall we take on these threads one at a time, starting maybe with
Okay.
Perrin, one of the simpler ones, and we can build
Yeah,
our way toward Moraine, and I think because that's kind of the most exciting
yeah.
climactic part. But let's start with Perrin and Avienda. And what did you make of the and Hopper's there, and we meet a couple of the other IL as they're making their way toward Falm. And what did you think of this particular thread?
Okay, this would be one of my minor quibbles.
Okay.
And I know they needed Perrin to get to Falm, and meeting up with Bane and Chiad, that was all, it was all great, except just because of how compressed they have had to make the story in order to fit with the episode order. It it was the one, well, one of two that kind of felt a bit tacked on. That it was, yeah, here's this thing is happening. It's important that this is happening. We want you to see it, but really, this isn't the focus of the episode. And it felt peripheral. It felt slightly vestigial.
Hmm.
Um, but in saying that, I did like it. We get a reminder of uh, the Isle honor code, and a brilliant sequence actually with Avienda accepting her toe. And each time she stands up, she puts her arms back. She has her arms out wide, her hands open. She is accepting it. She is choosing it. And that true agency in her decision. This is her decision to do this, even though it's within a strict honor code. We see that contrasted very neatly with how Rena is treating
Hmm.
Egwene, how Swan treats Rand, all of those other moments where it's about trying to make the decisions for other people. This is Avienda showing, no, this is who I am. This I choose this freely.
Hmm.
And I thought that whole sequence was actually really well done. And it got across that Avienda felt that she had made a mistake. She had been defending herself instead of Julian,
Hmm.
and Julian suffered a wound as a result. So she felt responsible for that. And therefore, this was a dishonor. An obligation had been created because she had failed in her duty. And I thought that was a very neat way of visually demonstrating the complexity of the Isle honor system in a way that was easily accessible to a viewer. And again, her choice in making it was something that they kept focusing on.
Hmm.
And then slightly clumsily, she then explains it to Perrin later on. And again, I just felt that that sequence, there was a wee bit of exposition in this particular episode that I felt was a bit on the nose at times.
Uh-huh.
But you know, it's a complex, a very complex world that Jordan created. It has complex societies. It
Okay.
has very complex stories. It has multiple points of view. As soon as you start paring that down to fit into the structure of these seasons and these episodes, stuff is going to have to be simplified and stuff is going to have to be quite bluntly explained. But usually they're slightly better at it. And I just felt that maybe it was a wee bit unnecessary. But you know, that's just me.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I need to remark on anything in that they're obviously having to get Perrin to fall one way or another, and we get a tiny bit of world building, a little more knowledge of the IL culture on the way. So that's all well and good. So let's move on to Matt.
Well, before
Oh,
we
you
move
had
on,
another thing on Perrin and Avienda?
one of the other reasons why this particular sequence kind of stuck out a bit is Jordan was clearly influenced by Frank Herbert's.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So I'm watching it with my wife, and she has not read Dune or Wheel of Time. And the moment she sees the IL, she's like, "Oh, it's Dune." I mean, she knows. I mean, it's kind of
So
obvious. Yeah,
yeah, the Fremen influence on the
yeah,
isle was very, very stark. And
yeah.
and again, it's part of the source material. You can't shy away from it.
Right.
But it makes it so obvious that that's that was the inspiration for this.
Sure.
And just
In the
with
books, and it shows in the show as well.
yeah. But one moment I actually really, really liked was when Avienda, Bane, and Chad saw the sea for the first time,
Yeah.
and their shock and wonder and awe at all of this water. And again,
That's a
striking
blink and you
similarities,
miss it moment there. Yeah, yeah.
but it was a really nice moment. And they were
Good.
using the hand signals, they were doing all of those things. I'm not saying the sequence was bad, but given the focus and drive of the rest of the episode, that sequence felt a little bit vestigial, a little bit on the side, kind of jammed in there.
I was thinking maybe we could do our conversations in hand signals, but so
That's all you would do. As soon as we are on, you would just start doing this because I'll be talking.
yeah. So, all right. Well, next, then, I think, speaking of talking, we've got Matt, who I actually myself was a tiny bit. I mean, he delivers the most memorable line of the episode. I think, is this a sex thing or a murder thing? I think is this sort of what he says, right?
Regardless, can we quit with the talking or something? And it was
Yeah. That was clever. Getting him there, I thought was a little awkward because okay, he's hit over the head. He wakes up, he sees Lanfear. So he's in Lanfear's hands, and then nope, no, actually, no, he's in Ishmael's hands. I guess he was just being like special delivery or something. But he goes all the way from Kyrian to Falm in the process, and wakes up in Falm, I guess. So we'll just say they did it by magic or whatever, I guess. But anyway, his encounter with Ishmael is the core thing here, I think. So what did you make of all that?
well, for a start, can someone do a counter for the number of people who get knocked out? Because and
Question.
like I said last time we were talking about this, it is one of those aspects of writing for TV and film
Yeah.
that genuinely is just a little tiny bit irksome about the casual concussions. But one of the things I was curious about was when Matt is knocked out, was that a grey man?
Mm,
Because no one notices this person suddenly sort of appear, and Matt only realizes at the very last instant. And so I'm wondering, is this putting a grey man in early, and then it'll get explained later? The way that they've seeded a lot of different things
yeah.
through both season one and season two to explain later on. So I'm curious about that. Because I thought it might have been a grey man, which I thought was a really nice and cool thing to put in. But we'll see. Yes, like you, I loved that line. It seemed so perfect for Matt. Matt uses far more vernacular than any of the other characters.
Yeah.
And again, the portrayal of Matt in the entire sequence, particularly the scene where he makes the tea and then drinks the tea. Just that just that section of him making the tea and drinking the tea. The physical acting that went into that was just so nicely done.
Mm.
And then the transition into that scene. Which and again, so like the parent sequence, this was one I was a wee bit shaky on. Again, because of the easy transition from oh, he's in Kyrian, oh no, now he's in Farm, and it felt a little too neat.
Yeah.
But greeted by Lanfear wearing the sort of pseudo modern, pseudo ancient business suit, which
Yeah.
the costuming has been so good for all of these different looks. And like throughout this episode, they emphasized again another few times 3,000 years ago was an advanced society. It was a different
Right.
world. It was more modern. It was more technologically advanced.
Ishmael talks about it. Yeah.
And I think this was a fear that some book readers had, that TV viewers just wouldn't understand all of this stuff. No, it's as it's coming along, it's being developed at a pace. Not
Mm.
everything was lumped into season one. There were elements of it, and it's slowly building up over time, like a giant 14-book series does. Um, but with that, the sort of the dream imagery. Again, I loved Ishmael in the scene.
I
And
did.
he does a very clever thing, which we see Rena do as well, and we have Swan does it at a certain point as well, which is a power play, asserting dominance and power over the other person. Ishmael does all of this, and then he goes, 15 minutes, you're going to make the tea and drink it yourself. He doesn't, he says, just do that. And then he leaves as if the choice is up to Matt.
Mm.
And it's a real assertion of power. When Rena took Egwene's hand to wash it, she held her hand out and made Egwene reach over.
Yeah.
When Rand walks in to see Swan, he is made to come to her, and she is sitting on her seat, but still much more elevated. And again, all of these things are all aspects of dominance and power that these characters are using to put the other person in their place. And we can probably talk more about the other ones in it when we get to them.
Yeah.
But so I liked again that Ishmael was, it's just subtle writing and acting
Mm.
to get across this thing. This is about control. It is about power. This has been emphasized so many times, shown so many times. But the actual dream sequence, this is why you shouldn't take tea from strangers.
Yeah. I mean, poor Matt. I mean, curiosity killed the cat, I guess, here.
Um, and there were a couple of interesting images that I think I saw. One, obviously, of Matt hanging, which for
Mm.
book readers, there's an association with that.
Right.
Then there was one, and it looked like Padden Fane drowning Matt in a bucket. And
Yeah.
then it changed from Padden Fane to Matt. So
Right.
weirdly enough, like Matt's storyline in the books he has Swiss cheese memory that then gets filled in later on. But I don't think these are past lives. I don't think any of
I didn't
this
get
was
that
true.
impression either. Yeah.
I think this was something that Ishmael was doing to break Matt psychologically, the
Yes.
way that Egwene was broken in the previous episode, the way, well, not obviously not the same. And that it was important that Egwene had that much time for something that powerful. But again, this is about breaking Matt down, about isolating him. And we see Rand being shielded. And again, this sort of trying to break the characters, to turn them into the tools
Right.
for other people to wield. So that's what Ishmael's trying to do to Matt. That's what Swan wants to do to Rand. Turn
Right.
him into a weapon that they will use.
Well, presumably Ishmael, I mean, if you're watching the show and even if you don't know much about the books, uh, it's sort of set up to be that Ishmael is prepping Matt to fulfill that vision that Min had, essentially, of being the dagger to get rid of the dragon reborn, perhaps, is one suspicion we might have. So that, maybe that's what he's doing when his whole business, his whole philosophy, which I enjoyed listening to, even if it was a little creepy, this idea of, I just want to end suffering. I really think that the way to do this is to shatter that wheel, because we keep getting born again and again. We keep doing the same things again and again. And I'm really out to just end it all. I just want to go to sleep and not wake up, and he's made this very appealing to Matt. And Matt's last bit of dialogue is gasping out the word how, and so I'm thinking, okay, Ishmael's got him kind of propped and ready, and now he's going to let him loose, but we'll see.
And it's interesting how that contrasts with Moraine, because Matt is at his lowest ebb. We saw him in the last episode betray Rand for the third time. He is at the bottom.
Yeah.
Marine, we've watched her, even though she had been stripped of her power, she was trying to, she was still focused, she still tried, she still forged on. And we're seeing that dichotomy of, on the one hand, sometimes that feeling of enough is enough, I cannot go on, and how appealing that can be when you get to that point that you just can't take it anymore, that you can't find the energy and the drive to go on. Like that is so seductive. And it's the counterpoint is Moraine.
Yeah.
Because Moraine was at that point and she still forced herself to go on, pushed herself to go on. And ultimately we see that she is healed at the end of this episode. And that connects to Egwene, which, just to mention very briefly, she was broken in the last episode, but something that is broken can still heal. It can be reforged. It can be made anew.
Yeah.
And we see Egwene braiding her hair, reminding herself of who she is, where she comes from, of the woman's circle from episode 1 of season 1. That even at your lowest point, there is a way to heal and come back. And so I think both Egwene and Moraine provide the viewer with the counter argument to what Ishmael is offering.
Yeah, well said. Because Lan even asks Moraine point blank, essentially, did you ever think about taking your own life? He doesn't use the words, but that's the question that I have one question for you, and please forgive me. I hope you'll forgive me for asking it. And she responds by saying, no, I have this really important thing to do, so I can't even think about that,
But I'm surprised that Detective Lan hasn't applied to join the Brown Sisters Detective Agency.
Poor Lan. Well, let's stay in Falm. We'll get to Lan and Moraine. We'll stay in Falm for a moment though, and we have Nynaeve and Elaine trying to free Egwene, whom we just mentioned, and they do have an encounter with Loial, good old Loial. So I don't think we need to pause a ton on their particular thread, but there is a significant thing that happens where they capture a soldam with the device that is meant to keep Damane in thrall. So that's an interesting little development there. What do you make of it?
Well, there are a couple of really good things. Number one, this, like with Matt's line, there's a really good line here that was a moment of humor that was definitely needed, which is when Loial sees Elaine and he starts offering all of his names, and then Nynaeve just cuts him off. Yeah, your name, his name sings in your ear. That was very funny.
That was good.
And again, totally in character for Nynaeve. That don't encourage her, and it was a lovely moment of levity. In the midst of all of this, you could still have a laugh, and it was in character, and you could see that Elaine was actually quite charmed by the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I like the dynamic that they've been playing with Elaine and Nynaeve of, can you trust the other person? They both think that they know better than the other, and they both are trained to be the one making decisions and being in charge and working together. A little bit of friction, but when they collared the Damane, I was surprised it was Elaine smacked her on the head with the branch.
Yeah.
I thought Nynaeve would have done that. But one of the things I liked about this was in the whole discussion about the use of the collar with the chain. And of course, they've been using a magical chain between the bracer and the collar.
Right.
That foreshadows the big reveal about what the collar can do and how the soldam work. And it actually ties in really, really neatly here. And so while I appreciate it was basically a practical consideration not to have physical chains between them all the time, it actually foreshadows that whole big reveal from the books about the soldam and the Damane.
Right.
And so I'm looking forward to seeing that develop. And I thought it was well done, it was well executed, and it felt good to get a bit of revenge for what we have seen done to characters of the Caravan.
Yeah. So that of course is their plan is to get into the kennels to rescue Egwene, and this is how they're affecting that plan. So good luck. But I have a feeling a lot of things are going to be happening at Falm, and they might have an opportunity or two there. So we shall see. Anything else on? I enjoyed the relationship between the two of them as well, Elaine and Nynaeve, which has always been kind of a jealous over Egwene, but also it's a clash of personalities. They're the odd couple here at the moment, so it's kind of fun to see. There, you've got the contrast between Nynaeve's just blunt, go at it, do it, and Elaine's very how do I put this, prim and proper and methodical kind of preferences. And
Prim and proper with a club.
Yeah, well, that's no, it was a nice, nice to defeat our expectations in that moment there, to have her kind of
I almost expect respect my authority.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So that was a fun thread, I guess, and I hope we're seeing what promises to be a great final episode of the season with everything being put in place. Hopefully we'll see more though from these two in the final episode. They didn't get a lot of screen time, understandably, because the focus was elsewhere, where kind of actually I thought was good, because we've been wanting more things to happen in these other threads, such as all the stuff going on in Kyrie. And so that's kind of a lot to untangle. Or did you have something more in Fall?
Egwene probably fits in here as well, because again,
oh yeah, sure, yeah, we should talk about Egwene, of course, and Rena and what goes on between them, and a couple moments there. One, the scene where Rena is like, "You all right? We're gonna show everybody what we can do, and I'm gonna be the special Soldam because I've got you." And oh, we're just great buddies now, aren't we? And then the scene in the prison where Egwene delivers quite a stunning line there. So, what did you make of all that?
Well, for sort of when they show the test, so they set up what the test is going to be, and it's a nice brief scene, but we see it really is distressing to see people in chains this way,
Yeah,
collared up like that. But one of the things that I it popped into my head, it shouldn't have popped into my head, but when Rena was basically waxing lyrical about how famous she's going to be because Egwene's going to burn so brightly, I really wanted another Suldam to lean in and go, but I hear there's another channeler who's the strongest they've seen in 1,000 years.
and the look on
just,
Rena's face,
just
yeah,
to do that, so Egwene would be like, not Nynaeve again.
yeah.
But with that blast, it was great to see the Suldam and the Dominate all get knocked down.
Yeah.
And then it was that scene transition to Loyal in the marketplace, hearing the
the echo. Yeah.
So again, that was a nice scene transition to show the movement between things. But it was that sequence where Rena just holds out her hand. And Egwene is hesitant and then eventually puts her hand out. And then Rena does the, I'm gonna wash your hands, like a good little pet. And then she espouses the ideology of the Seanchan.
Right.
And it reminds me so much of what we've spoken about before in terms of their ultimate goal is good.
So they say.
And they have decided that because the ends justify the means, they are justified to do whatever they want.
Right.
And we even have Rena say things like, we're going to stand together under the light. And you go, how can you say that and have it as an actual belief when the idea of standing together you enslave people.
Mm.
How is this under the light? How, and it's this, the power of propaganda and cultural beliefs to reinforce ideas to such an extent that you never question them. And Rena has never questioned these beliefs.
Right.
And we see the lie of it. We see the comparison to the White Cloaks, because that's what the White Cloaks are doing.
Yep.
You know, we're trying to get rid of dark friends. We're trying to fight for the light. So we're going to torture people. We're going to kill people.
Maim and
We're
horrible.
going to attack pacifists and feel justified doing it. And that is the frightening power of propaganda and narrative. And it's something that, you know, obviously it fascinates me because time and time again in history, we see how a popular narrative is manipulated, is weaponized to justify all sorts of abhorrent, aberrant, disgusting, dehumanizing behavior.
Yeah.
And again, this is a fantasy show. And this is a fantasy show that has taken real world problems, real world concepts, real world tragedies, covered them over in a fantasy skin and put them on the screen so that we can really start thinking about these things instead of just accepting them.
Yeah.
So,
well, there you have it. I mean, how many times in history have you had groups of people who have said, we know better than you, and therefore whatever we do to you is justified, you know? And it's scary, but and it's something that continues to this day. And it is definitely something that Robert Jordan was exploring in the books. And I feel that the show has done an excellent job of carrying through on that theme. So kudos to them. For maybe not in every single detail bringing out the theme exactly in the same way, but paying heed to that big theme in the Wheel of Time books and doing so very effectively, I think. So yeah, that was really well done, indeed. And then, of course, Egwene delivers the second most memorable line from the episode, which is, you know, after Rena's, you know, doing the little, you know, the little mini sponge bath on her hands and her face, and we're going to be best pals. And it's just, Gwen looks at her deadpan and says, I'm going to kill you. Yeah. So it's like, you haven't erased my humanity yet, you know? So.
and it's an incredibly powerful moment. And again, it's how it was combined then with the close up of later on Egwene braiding her hair. She might have been broken, but she has not given up. She is reforging herself. And as brutal as the lessons of the Sul'dam have been, she is going to take what she learns there and she is going to use it for herself. And she hasn't given up. And that strength of character, that strength of purpose, is again, it's enormously inspiring that even in the darkest of circumstances, that she still has the sense of community of where she came from, of who she is. So, you know, you can think of it. It was a very powerful scene, and I like that the rebraiding of her hair. There wasn't a big music cue. There wasn't a big, you know, crash zoom to show this. It was steady.
Yeah.
It was slightly understated, and you know, I thought it made it more powerful because of that. It was a quiet moment.
Yeah. Well said. All right, are we now ready to move on to Kyrie and from Falm and the various? I mean, Matt did it in a hurry, although we're going in the reverse direction. So, I mean,
carry on, Kyrie, and then
yes, there we are.
one of the lesser known films.
So I think there's a whole bunch of threads that interweave here. One of the easier ones to tease out, so we'll start with this, is perhaps the Leandrin slash Barthanes and what is his mother's name? Moraine's sister.
Andrea?
Yeah, close enough.
Something like that.
Something like it begins with an A. Anyway, that little bit because I thought we could just briefly touch on that. And I am sad that there will be no more sandwiches. You know, and oh, who saw that coming? That the super nice guy was actually a dark friend.
Exactly. I have been telling people for years about you, Philip. Oh, sorry, you were talking about Barthanes.
I'm talking about Barthanes.
Oh, I thought it was going to be this confession, like on screen to tell everyone.
I'm not making any sandwiches for you, buddy.
Well, you'd probably put that tea root thing in them, and I'd be all weird.
Yeah, well, anyway, you're not getting any sandwich meat from me. So
And you were a big fan of Barthanes, I seem to recall.
I liked him. I wanted him to be real. I'm very sad right now.
He was real,
Yeah.
just evil.
So, man, no more sandwiches. But I thought it was clever the way his mother, I mean, and gosh, contrast her with Leandrin. What a contrast. You know, Leandrin and her son. And here we have Lady, I should remember her name, but
Something like Andy.
yeah, we'll go with that. And her son, and the interestingly, the both the parallel but also the contrast here between this kind of pairing, and Leandrin entering this sphere is a reminder of those parallels, because Leandrin's the one that delivers the message to Barthanes: kill your aunt, and if your mother gets in the way, kill her too. You know, and you can see Leandrin having just learned her lesson from Lanfear about, oh well, sorry, it's your boy, I know, but he's in the way. Blah, you know, so it was an interesting dynamic, I thought, there.
And that sequence was initially introduced because I think it's Ivan, or no, it's Maxim who says, "I'm wondering where Leandrin is," and then it cuts to Leandrin walking in,
Yeah.
and she looks up and she sees the portrait of Marine, and then the next scene it went to Marine. That's what I was talking about in terms of the scene transitions. It was
That's good. Yeah.
One of the things that I liked about this again was this is a household um, that is very deeply personal to Marine. It's Marine's family, and Leandrin intrudes. But of course, from an outside perspective, Marine is Aes Sedai, Leandrin is Aes Sedai. They should be allies. That's why she was being received the way that she was. So there's a lot of, again,
great game.
The appearance of allyship and then the betrayals. And then it's then revealed, oh no, I'm delivering a message from our master. So it's this other betrayal. And yeah, you're going to go and kill your aunt. And so he goes, well, I'm going to have to betray my aunt because she won't see it coming because it's such a deep betrayal. And unexpectedly, I think for a lot of people, Anvir steps in. She protects her sister, who we know she's kind of annoyed at, just a touch.
Yep.
Because again, like her sister, as she says about Maria, she knows the difference between right and wrong, and sometimes doing the right thing is difficult. And you know, Barthanes said, "But I did this for you. I did this to. Why do you think our family rose so fast and so quickly and to such heights? I'm going to be married to the queen. Like, how do you think all of this happened? I did this for us."
Yeah.
So again, the idea of the ends justifying the means.
Let me out, mommy. Yeah.
And that, you know, the difficulty that Anvir had, that emotion of having to betray her son.
Yeah.
But knowing it had to be done. And when you think of, again, Swan and Moraine and Swan, each of them thinking, this is what must be done.
Right, right. Well, speaking of which, I think we might as well move on to Swan and Moraine. You already mentioned the prologue, which I also agree was effective in setting up some of the themes and some foreshadowing. So that's a good prologue in my book. I thought that was nice to get a look at them as in a happier time, perhaps, but also getting that. And this is we get the prophecy from the Aes Sedai, the ancient Aes Sedai Guitarra. So that was a cool little way to work that in as well, I thought, which is book lore in a way, I guess, but kind of cool actually to see with the initial instigation behind this secret mission that Moiraine has been on all these years, but also how much that mission has disrupted her life, her what she wanted with her life. They had this vision of retiring together after doing certain, accomplishments, and that had to be, I mean, you could see on their faces almost when they're told this prophecy, like, oh my, this is kind of upset all these plans we've been talking about here, right? So that was kind of cool. And then, of course, we see them together now in this very fraught moment where they have drifted apart and they are viewing their mission very differently at this point, and there's mistrust has crept in as well because of that difference.
Well, and part of the directive that Jatara gave them was find the dragon and prepare the world to follow. So they split it in two, with Moiraine taking on finding the dragon,
right,
and Siuan preparing the world to follow.
right.
And then when we immediately transition to the two of them meeting, and Siuan coming forward to see Moiraine and dismissing Leanne, Leanne Sedai, who acted really like it was, I don't like my sister. She's always your favorite, and that actor did that really well.
That was clever. Yeah.
There's no love lost between the two of them. What I find really interesting about that sequence between Siuan and Moiraine is Siuan's hurt that Moiraine didn't confide in her.
Why did you tell me you were stilled? Yeah.
That Moiraine has been stilled, and there's an element to disgust in Siuan's reaction to that news, and also an element of pity, and they combine in a way that makes Siuan look at Moiraine as now without power, as if Moiraine's only power, her only ability, her only use was the one power. And we all know that is untrue. But we can see how Siuan is feeling this, that she believes Moiraine has been stilled. You don't have any power anymore. Let the grown-ups handle this now. You're out of the game. You've carried this burden long enough on your own. Let me take over now. There's an element of being patronizing in that, of feeling sorry for Moiraine because this has happened to Moiraine. And part of it is she thinks that Moiraine has lost it. She thinks that Moiraine has been pushed too far. And why does she think that? Moiraine was going to transfer Lan's bond without his consent, and that disgusts Siuan. And it's something that Siuan is thinking, the Moiraine I knew would never do that.
I'm not convinced she actually would have. That might have been just a go away, Lan, like you said before, throwing rocks at Old Yeller and saying, go away, Old Yeller, don't follow me,
But I think a lot of that is in Siuan's reaction in this scene.
Yeah.
All of this information. Why didn't you trust me? A feeling of betrayal. We've been corresponding for months, and you never told me. And of course, Moiraine's go, well, because if I told you, this is exactly what would have happened. You wouldn't have trusted me. Right. And so Moiraine is feeling both attacked at her lowest point, and yet there's tenderness and love here because Siuan reaches out to touch her face, and right. Moiraine is initially resistant to it, and then recognizes that, yes, she has missed this. There's a lot of complexity and nuance in that sequence, and
I agree.
I really liked how they did it.
I agree, and of course, there is an intermediary of a sort, and that is Lan, who is trying to negotiate his way somewhat in the dark, and is trying to help Moraine in a way that she doesn't want to be helped, and that's why he agrees to bring in Swan, and he's got Alana and her two warders that we can, I guess, bring them into the conversation as well. But Lan has some great scenes here, and particularly, I think, in relation to Rand. There is also a great scene with him and Logain, although I will say there's one thing about the scene with Logain that I did not like, which is the idea that Lan would give him this present, like, okay,
and go back on his word.
and then go back on his word. That is not an honorable thing to do. That is not consistent with the character in the book or the show that they presented so far. So I thought that was no. That was not the right move. That was my biggest niggle with this episode was, wait, that's not nice. And because we like Lan, I think a lot of people will overlook that and say, oh, it's the good guy doing his good guy thing. But no, that's a mean, dishonorable thing to do in that moment.
Dishonorable, vindictive. And because the reason was, like, you killed my friends.
Right. That did not seem like the Lan in the show or the books. So I didn't like that moment. Other than that, Lan's meeting with Rand, his attempts to help Moraine, and the scene where he has figured out, actually, because of Logain, oh, actually, you're not stilled. It's you're shielded. There's a knot, and that's he's bringing things together, in spite of being over his head and out of his element. I thought that was kind of a nice Lan moment. But.
And that there are a couple of moments where you see him starting to try and piece these things together. And remember, he sees Rand being shielded. And there's a lot of talk about shields again in this episode. So it doesn't come across at the end as some sort of Deus Ex Machina, that it's been there from the very beginning. And can I just say, I'm feeling smug, because I said this from the very beginning, that she wasn't killed.
You're feeling smug, AP? I can't believe it.
Mugosaurus Rex. But again, Lan pieces it together, and he uses each of the different bits of information to go and try and find out other things. And he's the one who thinks of actually speaking to Logain, someone who can see male weaves.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought Lan, junior detective, that was nice. But I agree with you. Him going back on his word in such a vindictive way, that was a moment it struck me as the wrong note.
I agree. Yeah.
For everything that the show had been portraying about Lan. And that one stood out. Yeah. But it is a very human reaction. And see, I think that's where the tension comes in. Part of what the show has done is they have made Lan slightly more human. And because of that, that lets in some of the more human flaws.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was, in my opinion, in that moment, maybe I'll change my mind later, but at the moment, I did feel like it was off key. And it's something that you see, like, you've talked about in the, just to give it a different example entirely, the Iron Man film, where we see Iron Man wiping out a whole bunch of, hired help and stuff. And we're all like, yeah, because he's the hero and we're rooting for him. But you just step outside of that for a moment and you think, wait, he's killing a bunch of people who didn't, you know what I mean? It's one of those kind of things where I feel like we're expected to go, oh yeah, you got him good there, Lan. But really, it just, to me, felt off key. It was a dishonorable moment that didn't seem to mesh with the way they were presenting Lan otherwise. So,
and I think that one of the ways that I would have gotten around that would have been for Lan to give him the key, Logain to release himself, but then Alana go, I'm still standing right here, dude.
Yeah. It would have been slightly better, I guess.
But actually, weirdly enough, in that transition to that scene where Lan goes to meet Logain, that was the one transition that really stood out that I didn't like, which was Mascom looking in his sword or in the dagger
Oh, his
checking himself out.
reflection. Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, really? Is that necessary? And yet the scene was saved because we had the whole, well, what did you expect? We were going to fight an army of kittens?
Yeah. Yeah.
Man the catapults, barrels of catnip, different strategies.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was good. Overall, I thought the land moments were good. And his dialogue to Rand was pretty good. There was a nice little line there as well, about, I can't remember the exact wording, but it was like face things with courage, stay on your feet, as best you can, or whatever it was. Do you remember what he said?
Uh, uh, the important lesson about being a man, like face things on your feet. And of course, as soon as he goes in, Rand's on his knees.
Yeah,
Um,
pretty much. Yeah. In spite of Lan trying to prep him, and of course
but
Swan being like, Lan prepped you, didn't he? Yeah.
but he had they talked about the sword forms. They did those little things,
That
which
was
are
nice. Yeah.
moments from the book, and maybe this is the start of having more of those things brought in. But um, Varen getting the Ogier map and
Mm.
Varen being the one to release Rand.
I liked
And
Baron in this episode a lot. Yeah.
Varen is stealing scenes left, right, and center.
Yeah. 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 No, that I like Baron a lot in this episode. And notice that she lies to Lyanna.
No, she doesn't.
Well, doesn't she though? She says Swan has orders for you. She needs you over here.
That. I actually wrote this down
Okay.
because I was convinced that you would get this wrong.
You know me too well. You're just like what's his name there? The Forsaken dude.
I'm the Forsaken.
Yeah, because you predicted this. So, the mastermind thing.
So the first thing that she says is that Amerlin requires your strength to protect Kyrian.
Okay, that's vague enough. That's vague enough.
It's big enough, and it is definitely true from a certain point of view because the Aes Sedai was brought to Kyrian as part of the Amerlin
Ooh,
strength.
yeah.
I've been told to watch the boy. She never says someone told
Who
or who
told
told
her?
her.
Yeah, okay.
So it could have been her warder,
Or it could have been Moraine, or it could have
or it
been
could have been Marin, or it could have been one of the Forsaken, or it could have been anyone. She could have turned to her warder and said, "Tell me to go and watch the boy," because I've been told to watch the boy. That's
yeah,
all that she says.
right.
And then she says, "This is an order, Lian Sedai." What is that? Her being told to watch the boy was an order?
I don't know. There seems like some prevarication involved in all of this, but
That,
on
that
a
and
very
then she says,
literal level, then okay. All right.
and then she says, "I'll take his shield." So none of those was a lie.
Strictly
None
speaking.
of them.
All right.
But and this is what we do all the time. It's the difference between the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. And we've seen the Aes Sedai play with this every single time. They can't say something that's untrue, but they can allow you to make inferences that they know will lead you to the wrong place. So because she starts with the Amerlin requires your strength, I've been told to watch your boy, this is an order. Liane, who should know better,
Yeah.
interprets that as the Amerlin has sent me down to pick you up, and I'll look over it. You need to go up there. That's an order.
Yeah. Of course, you'd have to think that Varen would have to make herself scarce after that.
Yeah.
She's kind of revealed
Uh,
herself there a little bit.
so as far as I can tell, there isn't a single lie in any of that.
Interesting. Yeah. Good catch.
And
Yeah.
I thought that you would go, I spotted a lie.
Well, Ishmael, I guess
Nemesis.
remind me never to play chess with you, okay? So
I wouldn't play chess with you. You'd probably cheat. It's a serve. My pawn can get to the far end of the board if I hit it hard enough.
Yeah, wait, isn't that part of chess? So, all right, very well. There's more going on here. We got, I mean, just to add to the chaos at the ending here, we have Lanfear blasting away to create a distraction, presumably, but also showing up to tip the scales there at the end. So that I don't know, are we ready for that final scene yet, or was there more
Well,
stuff we needed to
let's
talk
talk a
about?
little bit about Lanfear, and then we'll work through Moraine and Rand all the way through.
Okay.
So, Lanfear, I love the interactions with Rand, but especially her dressed in a uh, brilliant outfit that more closely resembles a lot of what she's described as wearing in the books. And
Mm.
it's the way that she is just casually, daintily walking along and causing chaos and
Oof.
destruction
Yeah.
and having a bit of a blast and, oh, well, this is, it's a bit of fun. And the casual displays of her power, how easy this is for her. And then her exasperation of like 3,000 years and we're back to this. And it's, why have I woken up in this awful age?
Right.
But wonderful, wonderful performance. And
Yeah.
the byplay between her and Rand, that the little digs and the manipulations of each other, and how she's liking that he's trying to become more manipulative and colder and more powerful. And she actually likes that.
Yeah.
And so again, I thought the acting was superb, and just the sheer brutality of those casual displays of power that show that she is so far beyond
Yeah.
not necessarily just power, but technique. And I
Yeah.
think this is something that frequently gets overlooked. It's her easy, casual, quick use of the power to devastating effect. That to me is the most jaw dropping thing. Not the fact that it's a big effect, but that it requires so little from her.
Yeah.
Whereas when we see Moraine trying to open the ways, it's this big, I have to balance this and it's this wave and it's complicated and I'm thinking and the ways slowly open. And
Yeah.
then when Lanfear walks up and says, yeah, open.
Yeah.
I, and I like that just such casual mic drop moments of powerful.
Yeah, it's great. Rand particularly seems like a Labrador puppy next to like Lanfear is like a dire wolf or something. I mean, the contrast between them, not just in terms of their grasp of the power, but the level of just sophistication is quite effective at the moment. So Rand has a lot of catching up to do at the moment. But yeah, that one line where she says, "Oh, I love it when you try to manipulate me," like, "Oh, good puppy, nice try," So yeah.
So why don't we talk about Moraine and Rand? Because that's the
Yeah.
major thread that goes through it. And it's
That's
going to
kind
touch
of
on
we're finally getting more and more of Rand here, and I'm liking it. I thought actually the actor was doing a good job in this episode, portraying his angst and his you know feeling of, yes, I want to help, I want to cooperate, but I am scared that you people are going to put me in a cage or that you're going to use me, and So I thought a lot of his anxiety was very well portrayed in this, and then the him being reunited with Moraine here was a key moment. So what did you make of the Rand and Moraine parts of this?
I like the fact that Rand realizes how different Moraine is from the other Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
She, despite everything, despite what he initially thought of her, she has been on his side. And with Rand cutting through the binding of the weight, he frees Moraine. He returns Moraine to her power.
Mm.
And she, I think, in that moment, actually starts thinking of Rand as someone with power to be treated more as an equal. Because
Mm.
up until this point, Moraine and the others have been very much Rand is their pawn. And she sees the natural extension of that behavior in what Swan does. Because Swan, when Rand first comes in, and again, the disparity in height, she's sitting on her throne and he's made to come in and stand for. He then bows and calls her mother, form of respect. He greets her formally. She calls him boy.
Mm.
She doesn't greet him. She calls him boy. She puts him in his place. And then it's revealed, we're going to use you as a weapon, not a general.
And
You're
she
going to
doesn't
be a
deny either. She doesn't deny when he says, you already made up your mind before you met me, what you were going to do to me. And she doesn't deny it.
And when you think about what Swan is suggesting, that's Sultan Dominic.
Mm-hmm. Pretty
That's
much.
what that's
Yeah.
what Swan is suggesting. They're
There's the
going to
control
keep
theme.
him wrapped up,
Yeah.
cut off from the source until they need him to use his power, and then they will treat him like a weapon. And what? How can Swan have gotten to this position given the prophecy we see at the start? Moraine, she believes, is still. Moraine's been hiding things from her.
Mm.
They know that the Forsaken, some of the Forsaken, are loose. And this kid walks up to her and he knows nothing. He doesn't have control of his power. He hasn't been learning how to use his power. He has just been swanning around for 6 months and done nothing. And Moraine has disappointed her. Moraine wasn't there to guide him. Everything about this, Swan's looking at this situation. The Forsaken are around. The end of the world is coming.
He needs
And
to take
this is what she has to
control.
work with.
Yeah.
Moraine has failed her. She has to take control
Yeah.
because this is the only way forward. They tried it. Moraine screwed it all up. They need to do this.
Yeah.
And when it's pointed out, when Rand says, so you're going to gentle me. And she laughs, like she genuinely laughs because, no, of course we wouldn't gentle me. Although some of my red daughters would consider it.
Right.
You suddenly realize that, yeah, the fact that Rand fought this isn't so far off the mark. And there's no guarantee that if he was in Aes Sedai hands, they wouldn't do that. Because for 3,000 years, this has been how they have ruled. They have lost sight of where they came from, the reason things are the way that they are. Things have been changed over 3,000 years. No
Mm.
one has a perfect memory of these things anymore. And Swan in this moment, we know in season 1, she was talking about these nightmares that she was having.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they went to the Eye of the World in the first place.
Right.
So if one of the Forsaken has been whispering to her in her dreams, it's not that Swan's a dark friend or evil or
Right.
a bad guy, but whispering in her ear every night about these doubts, these fears, and building it up. She doesn't have faith in Moraine anymore. She
Right.
can't trust Moraine anymore. And I think that's important because a lot of her decisions in this make perfect sense when you consider her position.
Yeah, when you consider her position in the great game among all the other players, but also the great game within the Aes Sedai power structure, she does not have complete control over the White Tower. There are elements in there. I'm not even talking about the Black Aja or the Dark Friends among the Aes Sedai. They're there, but there are also many factions there that want to have a different agenda, from what she does, like the Red Sisters, who I know they're not all like Leandrin, they're not all Dark Friends or whatever. So she has a very wobbly grasp on power herself. So she's in a precarious place, and I think she is put in a corner where she feels she needs to take control there. And unfortunately, that has for Rand means a fairly unenviable position that they're putting him in, and it's well done because there's the personal conflict that's being brought here, that they have, I think, set this up pretty well in terms of the Moraine Swan. They're romantically involved, and now they're at odds, and they don't want to do these things to each other. And at the very end, when that scene at the gate where Moraine has opened it, and then suddenly Swan shows up after, well, Moraine has been healed or unshielded by Rand. Nice moment. Swan shows up, shields Rand again, and then you have Lanfear show up. And so then, boom, everything is brought to this point of, oh my goodness, look at all these conflicting things coming here together in this one tense moment. And what we get is that pretty brilliant scene to end things with, although I have a few questions. Maybe they'll be answered. But what does exactly Lanfear do to Swan in this moment? Why is Moiraine going to go along with them? I guess because she wants to protect Rand and be there. But how's that going to go when Lanfear? Last time they were together, Moiraine had put a sword through Lanfear and slit her throat. There seems to be, a little bit of a grudge there. Rand gets in the way and says, "No, don't hurt her now." And Lanfear seems willing to go along with it. But that whole thing with Swan, I thought was really compelling.
Because I think, interestingly, in that moment, because when Swan initially comes in before Lanfear gets there, and she sees Moiraine, and Moiraine is channeling, and you lied to me.
Yeah.
And we know what that means. For someone to lie, it means they must have broken their oaths. So Moiraine's a dark friend. The betrayal that Swan feels, you told me you were still, you lied. And of course, Moiraine's going, I didn't lie. I've been more truthful with you than with anyone else.
Right.
But Swan is feeling betrayed. And here she's going, right, we had the Dragon Reborn. We were going to proclaim him here. And you've gotten one sister to break him out. You've run across, there's a distraction going on with one of the Forsaken. You've lied to me, and now you're trying to flee the city. So from Swan's perspective, it's clear that Moiraine is in league with the Forsaken.
And she is temporarily, because they had the same goal to bring Rand to Falme. So to fulfill the prophecy. Now, the next part is going to probably be where they part ways, but they want this thing right now.
And so when Swan forces Moiraine to obey her, when she abuses that power,
there you go again.
That breaks Moiraine, because that is the ultimate betrayal. This was like, because remember how that scene was shot? It was shot like a marriage vow.
Yeah.
And Swan has twisted that love, has abused that love and that trust. Because Moiraine says, if you ever loved me, don't.
And also don't forget something that you pointed out when we talked about that episode in the first season, was that Moiraine changes the line a little bit. She says she's supposed to say, swear allegiance to the Amyrlin seat. She says her name. She makes it personal. So her use of that power over Moiraine in that moment is even more poignant, I think, because Moiraine had done it on a personal level, as you said, more like a marriage vow. So for her to force Moiraine in that moment, it's even more powerful, because Moiraine didn't swear to the Amyrlin seat; she swore to Swan herself. So it's even more of a, I guess, betrayal in a way. But then, of course, Moiraine has to make a decision. She sees Swan bleeding and lying there, and who knows what has been done to her. Am I going to help my beloved here, who just made me do this awful thing, or am I going to do this mission that I'm sworn to do and I sacrificed everything for in order to save the world? And that conflict is written on her face.
And the fact that it was intercut with a scene of the two of them coming together, that opening scene of the two of them coming together and being together and getting closer. Yeah. And this is the two of them parting. I thought it was very, very well told. And from Swan's perspective, this, imagine what this is going to look like. She lost the Dragon Reborn. Her ex-girlfriend ran off with the Dragon Reborn.
Yeah.
And a Forsaken. And this all happened under her watch.
Yeah.
I don't think Swan's going to be in.
And now she's crippled in some way, we think, because Lanfear said, well, I'd rather have a weaker, Amyrlin seat, a broken Amyrlin seat than a dead one. Yeah.
And I think, Lanfear's been learning that just killing all of your enemies, sometimes, Ishamael might have a point, that suborning your enemies or weakening your enemies can be more useful. But I don't know if she's done anything permanently to Swan, other than just like knocking the tar out of her.
I'm just wondering how, and this is, I won't say specifically what I'm thinking because I don't want to mess things up for people who are just watching the show, but I'm thinking of stuff that happens in the books a little bit later to these characters. I feel like they're condensing a lot, and that they're condensing stuff that happens. In a way, Swan is a stand-in for a lot of other Aes Sedai and stuff that happens between the Aes Sedai and Rand. I think they're going to have to condense a lot of that maybe, and they've done that. If what I'm thinking they're doing is what they're doing, then I think they've done that effectively.
Yeah. And, if we think of the White Tower politics as kind of being like a dove, and the noise a dove makes is coo, coo.
Yeah.
But I think Swan is now in an incredibly difficult position because a Forsaken attacked, they didn't stop her. She's lost the Dragon Reborn.
Oops.
One of the Blues has run away with the Dragon Reborn and the Forsaken, and she got beat. So I think her status is going to take a knock from this.
At the very least. Yeah.
And also she has lost her strongest supporter in Moraine because of what she did.
Right.
And so that feeling betrayed by Moraine, but also feeling the shame of betraying. And we saw this with Matt.
Yeah.
It's a lot of these moments that we're seeing, lot of connection between various characters and arcs that we see they're playing out slightly different ways. And Rand, even when shielded, talking to Moraine, and he comes to the realization how he's going to get out of this is he needs land fear. It's like, well, they want me. They want me to get to Falme. If I can't get to Falme, they're going to be annoyed. Therefore, the Forsaken are likely to help me. And you can see him explaining this to Moraine, and Moraine gets it. Moraine immediately knows what Rand is going to do. And so again, it's a lot of this. Can you imagine in episode 1 of season 1, someone saying to Moraine, at some point in the near future, you are going to plot against Swan Sanche to free the Dragon Reborn with the aid of a Forsaken. There is no possible way that Moraine would have even contemplated that.
A Forsaken that you literally just stabbed in the back. So, yeah.
And so we see a lot of this, the great game, unlikely alliances, betrayals, betraying those closest to you because out of necessity.
Yeah.
Almost every storyline in this episode contained elements of that. And that's why I think it was very well named. I thought it was thematically cohesive. I thought it advanced the plot. It advanced things towards this confrontation, the fulfillment of prophecy, which is such a big thing. The prolepsis that Jordan built into the world of these prophecies that the Dragon Reborn is going to fulfill. And Swan was going to try and stop that because she was going to declare him in Pyrene. I was like, no, to fulfill the prophecy, he has to be in Falme.
Right.
So this I thought was an excellent episode. I thought it was incredibly well done, with those little minor moments that didn't really work as well for me. And I'm really fascinated to see how the season finale is going to play out.
Well said. Speaking of which, our final discussion on Wheel of Time episode 2 is going to be over at AP's channel, A Critical Dragon. I'm excited. I think this season has gone exceptionally well. This is a really great show. I'm feeling like at this point, it is a big improvement over season 1 when obviously they were bedeviled by various factors. I'm pleased to see some great fantasy storytelling on screen, and they're getting through some important, I feel, concepts and themes that Robert Jordan was exploring in the books as well. So, I'm enjoying it. I'm looking forward to episode 8 and to discussing it with you, my friend and nemesis. So, all right, everybody else, thank you so much for watching this, and check out our last discussion over at A Critical Dragon. Till then.